Good afternoon. I'm Rob Marsack. I'm president of ASPPPO, and I want to welcome everyone to the 2013 annual meeting of both ASPPPO as well as CSA. Before we get started in a formal way, I'd like to express our gratitude to the Country Club for allowing us to have the meeting in their facility. It's a beautiful facility. Unfortunately, we've got the blinds closed, but it's a fantastic view, as everybody knows. And I want to thank them. I also want to thank all of you for being here. We appreciate the fact that you're interested. We appreciate the fact that you're here. And I hope we can give you some valuable information and some insights as we go forward this afternoon. As I was thinking about the way to get everybody relaxed, I was thinking maybe we ought to have cocktails before this rather than after that. But we'll think about doing that a different way. I know Ken Lauer and I are in favor of that, so I'm not sure about everybody else. With that, Christine, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we have a quorum with the attendees and the proxies.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll call to order. Okay, can everybody hear me? Very good. First item, and it's actually the only formal item we have on the agenda, and that's the approval of the May 29th, 2012 meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion? Move. Is there a second? Second. Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Opposed? So moved. Thank you. Bear with me for a moment because I'm going to give you a bit of a background, but before I do that, I'd like to introduce the board members to you, and I'd like to acknowledge those board members who stepped down in 2009. In the way of format, we'll have the ASPPPO meeting first. We'll move immediately to the CSA meeting, and after those two meetings, we'll have a combined question and answer period. Hopefully the two meetings as well as a question and answer period won't take much more than an hour, and with that we can adjourn. With respect to the board members, I really want to express my gratitude to all of them, both those that have stepped down, but also those that have joined us and those that have been on the board with me. A lot of time goes into this, a lot of effort, a lot of thought, and it takes a good deal of discipline to do that, especially when you think you're retired. It's more than I thought I signed up for, I must tell you, and I can assure you that my wife would agree with that. Let me go through the existing board, if I may. Can we move to the next? Okay. Christine Beal is our secretary, as you just saw. Dave Borghese, a new member of the board. Mike Jordan, also a new member of the board. Dave is an accountant. He's very helpful to both boards. Mike Jordan is an attorney. He's also of great use to us, as you can imagine. Joe Kernan has an extensive business background. He's new to us, and we're delighted to have him. Ken Lauer, who's vice president, has been on the board for a couple years. Bob Mang came on the board with me. He's also president of CSA. Myself, of course, Charlie Ryan. You'll hear from him later, as you will from Ken Lauer. And Chris Widnell, who is the treasurer. In terms of outgoing board members, those that stepped aside for a variety of reasons, not the least of which was that they had fulfilled 2 complete terms. Angie Greenfield decided not to run again for some personal reasons, but while on the boards, acted as ASPPPO treasurer and also was instrumental in the nominating process. Mike Hellman, who preceded me as president, who unfortunately is not here today. Mike was president of ASPPPO and continues to serve on the beautification committee as well as the security committee. John McLaughlin, who I think served simultaneous with Mike Hellman, was president of CSA. He continues to serve and continues to contribute his time on the Security Committee and the Gate Committee. And both and all of these people really have made a tremendous contribution. And to be honest, I've had my differences with all of these folks, as I do with many of the directors now. But that's the process we go through. We agree on some things, we disagree on others. But the one thing we don't lose sight of is that we have to respect one another. And I certainly respect and appreciate the time that these folks put in and the folks that I work with now. So please join me. Bob will do the same thing for CSA, but we have a joint nominating committee. We have 3 members from CSA for the Class A directors in CSA, which are the residential property owners. Of course, ASPPO is different because they're all residential property owners. Our nominating committee this year, as elected by the board unanimously, is Christine Beal, Chris Widnell, and myself. I am president, and pursuant to the bylaws, I'm required to be on the nominating committee. So pursuant to those bylaws, I am on the nominating committee. I would appreciate everyone's consideration of either themselves or trusted friends or neighbors to think about being on the board. Think about contributing your time, your effort, and your insights. It's very, very important that we have responsible, deliberate, sensible board members. And I would encourage everybody to give that some thought. If you have a friend, if you have a neighbor, or you yourself are interested, please let us know. We'd be delighted to talk to you. The interview process goes through late summer into the early fall. As you know, the elections are towards the end of the year. But please give it some consideration because it's very important to you, to the boards, certainly. But more importantly, it's important to you to have a responsible, sensible, practical, dedicated board. So I encourage everybody to give that some thought and give that some consideration. Can we move to the next slide? Okay. I want to give everybody a little bit of an appreciation for the scope of activity that we engage in at ASPPO. CSA is a different animal, and Bob will go through their level of responsibility and the things they've been involved in. And obviously there's some overlap both in terms of personnel, but also a lot of the activities that we do and a lot of the decisions we make. But this is basically the structure of ASPPO. We have an ARB liaison, which is Charlie Ryan this year, and the liaison basically attends every other meeting. And the off meetings, if you will, are attended by a CSA liaison. The liaison reports regularly to the board, advises the board of any developments, any concerns, or any problems that are foreseen. We also have a communications committee. Ken Lauer is the chairman of that committee, and it's composed of a number of people. It's become a very, very important committee in the community, and I'll give you a little bit of sense of that. And Ken's going to give you an overview of some communication issues, some issues that they've confronted and some developments they've undertaken on the community's behalf. Chris Widnell has been involved in the evaluation of density units, which is seemingly a black box in the community. Nobody really has a complete understanding of where it came from or what it really means. And we're trying to get a better understanding of that. People talk about it, but we don't feel comfortable that we have a full and complete, comprehensive understanding of its implications. So we're looking at that. Gated communities, essentially there's a group of gated communities, virtually all the gated communities on Hilton Head, and we meet 2 or 3 times a year to discuss issues, make presentations, and consider matters of common interest. To say that I'm the chairman of the committee or am the committee is a little deceptive because most directors attend those meetings or some directors attend the meetings when they occur. We also have a PAOA president's meeting These are the presidents of the various POAs, and there's a number of them throughout the plantation. We meet regularly with those presidents, and we talk about issues, we explain developments, and try to clarify issues that are swimming around in the community that have maybe been confused a bit. The most recent development, and I'll go into this in more detail in a minute, is the joint ASPPPO-CSA Beach Club Plantation Redevelopment Committee. That's a committee that is formed for the specific purpose of evaluating the beach club plans and working with the resort to be sure that the residential property owners' interests are protected. I'll explain that in a moment. That's a joint committee. I'm on the committee, Ken Lauer's on the committee, Chris Widnell, Bob Mang, Charlie Ryan, and Craig Ostergaard. Now that, as I say, is a joint committee, so it's for the purpose of taking a hard look at the beach club and some of the concerns people have. Back in 2012, we initiated an effort to develop some strategic initiatives. And we felt it very important that we take a fresh look at some issues, some fresh look at ASPPO, what it did, how it was perceived. We wanted to have a good sense of what our responsibilities were to the residential property owners. We wanted to focus our attention on what contribution we make to the community and be sure that we were serving our constituency. We also wanted to establish some goals for ourselves that frankly were attainable, something we could do. So we opted and erred on the side of practicality. Among the things that we decided we needed to do was we needed to focus our message as an organization so that residential property owners had a better understanding of what we did, why we did it, and what our responsibilities were. We wanted to clarify our role in the community. We wanted to achieve a higher profile for ASPPO, including the monthly coffee. We wanted to sharpen our message in the newsletter. We wanted to assure that the newsletter had community control and it was relevant to the community. We also wanted to intensify covenant enforcement. ASPPO is the exclusive entity that is specifically delineated in the covenants as the body to enforce covenants on behalf of residential property owners. And we felt very strongly that we needed to focus our attention on that. And you'll hear a little bit about that from Charlie Ryan in terms of some of the efforts we've made to accomplish that. One of the things that we thought was important, and this was important not only from the standpoint of ASPPO but also CSA, was to reach out to some of the interest groups within the community because we felt that we needed a dialogue with the community to fully understand their position and fully understand what their issues were. And as you'll see in a moment, there were some fruits to those discussions. We had discussions with the POA presidents, we had discussions with the country club, and we had discussions with the resort. Very importantly, we thought it very important to take a good, hard, and fresh look at the website because there had been complaints about the website and there was some sense that the website needed to be more user-friendly, needed to be more accessible, and more responsive to changing needs and technology. So we took a hard look at that, and you'll hear about that in a moment. Lastly, we needed to take a hard look at some covenant issues, and we've spent a lot of time analyzing covenants and looking at covenant implications and trying to be sure that the residential property owners were properly protected. Let's move to the next slide. As I mentioned, we had an early meeting with the country club, and Bob Mang and I had an early meeting with them shortly after being elected president of the respective organizations. And they expressed some concern about declining in membership, whether there's some ways that we could help them and the ways that we could work with them to try to improve the situation with respect to the club. I think as everybody's aware, there were a variety of solutions kicked around, but essentially three options emerged from our discussions. The so-called once a member, always a member concept, the eligibility of boat slip owners, and the very limited off-plantation membership. We agreed to work with them to see whether we could come up with a plan that would work for them and for us and protect the community, but at the same time give them some options in terms of increasing their membership. We worked very, very hard, a lot of time, trying to come to a conclusion and trying to come up with a resolution that was acceptable to them, that worked for them, and that worked for us and worked for you as residential property owners. We had a number of discussions. At our request, we did a survey, and I think as everybody's aware, the survey, well, maybe you aren't aware, but the survey return was very strongly supportive of the initiatives that were proposed. At the end of the day, we worked extraordinarily hard to formulate the referendum and to be sure that the revision to the covenants was complete, was accurate, and protected everybody's interests. At the end of the day, I think we were all a little surprised and I think pleased because, number one, we got a very strong return. Almost 50% of the property owners voted, which frankly was a very good return of ballots. We had 2,900 returns, 2,900. We only have about 6,000 voters, if that. So we were very pleased with the return of 50% response, and we had 92% approval, which is even higher than our survey. One thing it did demonstrate to us was that it's very clear that given the fact that the club only has 1,100 members, there's some sense in this community that the club does play a role, and it validates the fact that the club does play a role in the community at large, whether you're a member or not. And what that tells me is that most folks are eager to have the entities within this community succeed and not fail, that it's in everybody's best interest for everyone to succeed. It was a lot of work, and I think it was worth the effort. It certainly was worth the effort from the country club standpoint, and I think it was satisfactory to us from the standpoint of doing something that was obviously acceptable to the residential property owners. I'd like to take a moment to thank a couple of people. Carl Becker, who worked very hard in developing the referendum and making sure that the covenant revision was completely precise. Carl is a lawyer and is a tremendous assistance to both CSA as well as ASPPPO. With respect to the country club, Shirley Beavers, the president, worked very hard on this. I think those of you who are members know. Tom Lennox was also involved, John Matthews, Kathy Wilcox, and of course the general manager, Greg Clark. So I want to thank them for their assistance. Next date. Everybody's aware that the resort has announced plans to redevelop the beach club. I won't go into the details of it, but I just wanted to give you some perspective on what we're doing apropos of my discussion about the Joint Committee on the redevelopment. Every indication we have is that there's strong support for the redevelopment and refurbishment of that facility. It's dated, it's old, it doesn't have the kind of amenities that I think people expect. There's some problems, and we were aware of those problems as soon as we had our first discussion with the resort. There's some concerns about access, the covenants that control that facility. I'll be honest with you, I think they're very weird. But changing covenants is not an easy thing to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to work something out with the resort to make sure that we deal with the problems of parking, that we deal with the problems of access, that we deal with the problems of congestion. The committee has been engaged in active discussions with the resort. Those have been going on now for several weeks. We are very optimistic that we're going to be able to come up with a plan that not only suits the resort's purposes, but suits the residential property owners' purposes. They're anxious to have residential property owners use that facility. The fact of the matter is that the time frame in which we're really concerned is 10 weeks a year. That means there's 40 weeks a year that there's plenty of parking, there's not a problem with access, but we've got to deal with that 10 weeks. We've got to deal with the problem when it exists. That's the summer, that's around Easter, we all know that. There's some problems there, there's some issues there. They're aware of it, we're aware of it, and we're working very hard to come up with some solutions. I think at the end of the day, we're going to have some very, very sound options on parking. I think we're going to assure access to the facility by authorized users, residential property owners in particular. We're going to work on traffic control. And we're going to make sure that, to the extent you want to, you can enjoy that facility. We have also retained the assistance of a land planner to make sure that when we go through and come up with ideas and propose solutions, that they're well-founded. And we thought it best to have a professional at hand to make sure that we're handling this professionally and in the best interest of the community and doing it in a rational, professional way. So we're very optimistic we're going to be able to bring this to a conclusion. I think everybody's concerns are going to be satisfied, and we remain optimistic that we're going to be able to get this done. We're going to move on, and thankfully for all of you, I'm going to step down. We're going to have two speakers to explain a couple of issues. Ken Lauer is going to talk about communication. He'll go first. And then Charlie Ryan is going to talk about the land use monitor, which is part and parcel of covenant protection and covenant integrity. So Ken, you want to go first?
Thanks, Rob. There are so many things. I didn't want to bore you with tons of slides, so I put up a couple, but I'm going to address a number of issues. Obviously, when I took this position a year and a half ago, one of the biggest issues that I was told by many of constituents was we have to do a better job of communicating what's going on to the property owners of Sea Pines. So that's been one of the key goals that I've set out to try to do. When I came on board, the website was already in its development stage. Perhaps all I brought to it was some outside viewpoint on making sure that the website was easy to navigate, things could be found, and that graphically it looked much more appealing than what we had. Perhaps one of the more visible things is the newsletter, which these are the 3 new editions, hopefully, that you've been getting. It took us a while to kind of come to grips with this, but the key element that I wanted to have was that we put good, solid information in it, that we made it graphically appealing, and for most of us who are having issues with vision, I wanted to make sure you could read the type. And I think we've accomplished all of that. But besides that, there's so many other things that we earmarked. We began to open the meetings for CSA and ASPPPO board meetings so that property owners could actually sit down, listen to what's going on, and have a better understanding of some of the issues that we're dealing with and how we go about doing that. The community coffee. We wanted to make this a much more all-inclusive meeting generator, but we also wanted to make sure that we focused on key issues and that we addressed key issues for people who wanted to attend and make sure that we address those. And then obviously the website has become the conduit for all of the communication vehicles because everything that we're doing now is being posted. One of the areas, and this is an area that we instituted a while back, which are the email blasts. And you have to be very careful in communicating to an audience. You don't want to give them a blast every hour because after a while you get tired of email blasts and you just basically move on. So what we try to do is make sure that when news is relevant or it's important or it's breaking, that we get the news out to you as fast as we can. We also take our meeting notes, whether it be a CSA, ASPPPO, or community coffee, and we post those as well and send those out. The beach club information that Rob addressed, we set up a separate mechanism for residents to communicate their questions or concerns about the beach club renovation. And just as an aside, I got 2 of them this morning, which was interesting because we got a flood of them when we announced the renovation, and then everything kind of tapered off. But we have responded to 131 inquiries from property owners. Some of them have been very, very easy because they just wanted to know, is there going to be a pool? How is there going to be access? and so on. Some have asked some very, very detailed questions, which we've answered. But out of those 131 inquiries, there were really less than 10 that I would consider being negative. The majority of them just wanted more information. As we develop our long-range strategic plan in the future, which Bob will address, we want to make sure too that any major steps that we take in that are going to be communicated as well, and this will be the vehicle in which we do that. And it will be the vehicle for ongoing communications. And then we're even getting into the social media end. If many of you have already seen that we are on Facebook, and it's another great mechanism for us to get your input or to get more information out to you. So with that being said, in the communications area, if you look at what's happened and transpired in the last year and a half, I think you'll see very clearly that we listened to you, we understood your concerns, and we're doing our best to try to make sure that we address those. That doesn't mean that we're always going to be that it's always going to be the way you'd like it. And frankly, if you have any ideas or any criticisms or anything that you need to levy, you just send them on to me, and I'll do the best I can to make sure that that's addressed. Okay? So I think Charlie next. Charlie next. Thank you.
Well, I'm very impressed with everything that Ken is doing in the communications arena. I'm sure that he'll have all of us tweeting very soon. I'd like to talk a little bit about the land use monitor activities. I think a lot of you know that the position was initiated after numerous property owner complaints last year, quite a few of them. Following several months of planning, we hired a land use monitor. His name is David Risk. He began working late last year in the fall. His duties were to cover 3 areas: inspect ARB-approved property renovation, address property owner complaints, and proactively observe and report on and attempt to resolve property appearances that did not meet Sea Pines Plantation standards. He immediately began to inspect renovations approved by ARB and complaints that had been previously handled by David Henderson. However, only after additional research to develop land use monitor standards did he proactively begin to address property appearances and contractor activities. This he began doing only several months ago. The land use monitor standards on the screen were developed from existing 1970 covenants regarding property appearances and contractor activities. They were 1970 covenants, and we saw no reason to start with a fresh slate. We wanted to use that as a baseline. There are 15 property owner standards and 6 standards governing commercial contractors. So the 2 silos on the screen are representative of the areas covered by the 21 standards. The entire list of 21 is to be found on the CSA website. To address these 21 standards, the land use monitor works 3 days a week, staying well within the hours covered by the $30,000 budgeted for the position. Again, his duties are to inspect ARP-approved renovations, address ASPPPO property complaints, and proactively tour the plantation to observe property owner adherence to develop standards. David reports directly to Carrie Kelly on an ongoing basis. He also meets the first Monday of each month, with Mike Hellman and me, the 2 ASPPPO board members who review his activity. So what has the land use monitor found? Well, there are a lot of things. First, contractor complaints. There are a lot of ongoing issues in regard to contractor complaints. Where are they parking their vehicles? What kind of noise is there? How long are they on the site? I wanted to mention that there's an ongoing issue at Surf Scooter with construction that has been going on for 4 years without stop. We have visited the site several times. We've talked with the contractors and the project manager, but the issue has not been resolved as far as neighbors are concerned. We believe, and I personally believe, that it is a problem because the street is, well, the street is not blocked on a consistent basis, and that's pretty well handled, I believe, and the land use monitor believes. And the work is under permit, but it's an issue that there's a lot of noise, it's pretty consistent, and the neighbors are frankly very tired of the situation. I've talked with the ARB, and they say permits are issued that are either in succession or overlap at those properties, and the property owners are within their rights. There's nothing they can do as far as the covenants are concerned to prevent ongoing permitted construction. But as was mentioned, I am the ASPPPO representative to the ARB, and the ARB just had a meeting at 1 o'clock where this was discussed at some length. And there was a suggestion that perhaps they need to look at whether the rules can be changed. They're not sure that they can be, but they did seem to agree that this just isn't right. The situation isn't correct. You got 4 years of ongoing construction. So they're going to ask Chuck Skarmanach for his insight to see if there is anything that can be done about this and whether the covenants can be changed or there's some other approach. So I think it's a very positive thing that the ARB is looking at it and realizes that there is a great deal of concern. Beyond that, we, that is ASPPPO, plan to seek a meeting with the property owners that have this ongoing construction. Rob Marsack, Mike Hellman, and I, and possibly others, will see if we can work this out through diplomacy. We sympathize and also empathize with the folks on Surf Scooter that good neighbor policy should extend to reasonable lengths of construction time, and we'll continue to do our best to work this out. ARB also advises me that the manager at one of the properties has told them that the project currently underway is to end no later than July, and as far as that project manager knows, no other projects are scheduled. Other ASPPPO activities, these are things that the land use monitor looks at on a regular basis. Dead trees, tree debris, lot cleanups, barking dogs, cleanup between Tennis Court and Plantation Drive, an old car in the driveway, a truck in the driveway that obviously has not been moved for some time, an old car and trailer in the rear of that house, windows and doors leading up against that house. A neighbor running pool backwash from his pool into his neighbor's yard. Trash cans in areas that can be observed, fencing, neighbor removing vegetation from his neighbor's property, dumping yard waste in Newhall Preserve, unsightly plant pedestals in the front yard. A pool is green and needs to be tested. Lights are on all night. Playset on CSA space, unsightly mailboxes. With the ARB, most inspections show compliance, but it is agreed that due diligence is needed at all times. Footers dug for a garage expansion, no permit. Pouring concrete, no permit. Replacing the front deck, no permit. Site on Cedar Waxwing is described as a mess. Enforcement. ASPPPO complaints, generally they send emails to David Risk or letters to him. He responds and sends emails or letters to owners, and I can tell you that looking at the reviews, the owners generally express surprise, but they express willingness to respond quickly. Some owners are appreciative of the notice because they say they've been paying folks to keep their property neat, but apparently the services haven't been provided, so they're going to get on that. Some property owners return long narratives by email explaining their problem and asking what they can possibly do to resolve the problems created. There are issues with all of that. In most instances, the property owner needs to resolve the issue him or herself, and David is very good at explaining that. They're saying, what can I do? And I'm trying to do this, but gee whiz. And he will go back to them and be patient with them and help them along. With contractors and safety and security issues, David talks with the contractors, asks that they perform their work in the correct manner, and if upon further inspection they do not, he asks that security step in. After that, a letter is sent that says legal action will be taken. Legal action is also initiated if property owners do not comply with repeated requests. So in winding up the assessment of the land use monitor and his success, I think there is critical mass. Property appearance has moved from the complaint level to the proactive level. Properties long neglected are being addressed. A schematic diagram of problem areas and resolutions is being developed from this process. Contractors are a major issue in that they, 1, are being asked to step up compliance, 2, they need to be regularly monitored, and 3, their reading of compliance often differs from that of the property owner. Property appearance throughout the plantation is improving, I think, because of this process. The ASPPPO work dominates the land use monitor time. His hours last month, he spent 7 hours on the ASPPPO work and on the ARB work, and 18.5 hours on the ASPPPO items. So additional hours may be needed to resolve this. The good thing is the hours being worked currently are well under the allotted budgeted hours. The conclusion that I would give you is there has been excellent response from contacted property owners. Contractor issues continue and will require ongoing monitoring and additional attempts to negotiate areas of confrontation. It's a work in progress, but progress is being made. I also think we have the right person for the job, and I'm pleased with the initiative and with what he is doing. And I hope the people in this room are also pleased with it. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'm going to turn the podium over to Bob. Rob will turn to Bob, and he will finish up. I wanted to conclude by saying 2 things. Number 1, I wanted to thank the staff, some of whom are here today, on behalf of ASPPPO for their efforts over the course of the year. And secondly, I want to thank all of you for taking the time to be here. And I appreciate your support. I appreciate your interest. And if you have any questions, please let us know. Thank you. Move to adjourn, at least the ASPPPO meeting. So, thank you.